Hello and welcome back to Subjectively Correct, the podcast where two movie-loving pals discuss two movies in each episode according to a randomized theme. I am Matt, and with me is my friend and co-host Josh.
Hello, everybody.
For this episode, we pulled the theme of childhood nostalgia out of the hat, and so both of us brought a film that we grew up watching as children, and possibly still have today. Let's see if revisiting these as adults makes them lose their shine, and if we think the nostalgia is still warranted, or if we can acknowledge that we are looking through rose-tinted glasses. Childhood nostalgia. The show notes actually we had that it didn't have to be a movie that we actually seen as a kid. It could have just been a movie about the theme of nostalgia or whatever, or childhood. But
Yeah.
I guess, we both ended up just picking something straight up that we watched as little children.
I feel like this was a pretty easy pick for both of us as well. Like, we both came up with something pretty quick.
We both were children before and have seen movies, yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah. I think we probably both were already into movies at a very young age, huh? So we already had a big pool to pick from.
But I feel like I remember yours came up pretty soon after we got the category. And then, like, the next day I was like, oh, yeah, of course, this has to be mine.
Yeah, it's
like,
it's actually funny.
There wasn't really much contemplation.
I had other titles in mind, actually, but they actually share themes with this one, so it didn't really matter that much. Also, well, I mean, we don't have to talk about my pick yet, but there was a reason why it was so early, so clear that I would pick this one. But since you picked the older movie, it is your burden to start off.
Well, I am a bit older as well, so it stands to reason that my childhood harkens back to a time that's a bit older. We like to call the 1980s. In 1988 in particular, I was born in 82, so I would have been about 6 when I saw this movie, or a bit after probably when it came out. But I have picked the movie Willow, which probably won't surprise a lot of people because Willow is one of those movies that's always cited as a classic kids movie from the 80s that pretty much lots of people love and I think remember fondly. And it's not really an odd or controversial pick. It's just a pretty straight up pick.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, one of my first thoughts, just to mention it, for childhood nostalgia movies was Back to the Future. But of course, we've both seen Back to the Future many, many times.
Great movie.
So, you know, I'm sure we could talk about how great it is, but I always like to pick something that perhaps Matt hasn't seen. So I went with Willow. And for me, Willow is kind of like my Lord of the Rings, I guess, / Star Wars. It's my big fantasy movie of when I was a kid that I got really hooked on. But first of all, the deets are, it's directed by Ron Howard, who has, we know from Happy Days, and he's gone on to do stuff like Apollo 13 and a whole bunch of other movies that have won awards and all this kind of stuff. Top director. It's written by Bob Dolman. The screenplay is written by Bob Dolman, but this original story is actually a George Lucas story, who we all know from Star Wars fame, of course. And that may or may not be a good thing. But anyway, it's starring Warwick Davis, Val Kilmer, Joanne Whalley, Jean Marsh, Patricia Hayes, Billy Barty, Pat Roach, and some whole bunch of other people. It's actually quite a big cast.
Yeah.
In a bunch of roles that are cameos, and there's even a bunch of leads, I'd say, as well, because much like Lord of the Rings or that kind of thing, there's a lot of characters who get involved along the way. And it even shares a few kind of themes, I think, in common with that. And the basic plot is that it's in a fantasy world, and there's an evil queen who has a prophecy set against her where a child will be born one day who is the rightful princess of the land or something like that. And they will basically spell out the end of days for this evil queen. So the queen basically goes, all the pregnant people she's going to arrest, and every child that's born gets checked and potentially killed if they seem like they might be fulfilling the prophecy. That's like the first 5 minutes of the movie. In that, a child is born, who is born with a particular birthmark that kind of signifies that she is said princess, and basically a maid who's in the prison with all the pregnant people decides to help smuggle her out and basically pop her on a raft and shove her downstream. Hopefully she'll survive, kind of thing.
Very biblical.
Yeah. And that's where, and they're all kind of like human characters, and this is a fantasy world, and there are a number of different races of and that sort of thing. And this is essentially when Warwick Davis comes in as a little person and who's in a race of little people. It's basically every dwarf actor in the world is in this movie because they have an entire town and community and everything. Like, you'll probably recognize a whole bunch of dwarf actors because obviously, well, not obviously, but perhaps unfortunately even a lot of dwarf actors, you only recognize a few of them because the lead roles that they get are usually given to a few specific actors. So anyway, that's a whole other thing to talk about. But Warwick Davis and his family, who are just farmers, find this baby in the creek, and they basically see it as a bit of a bad omen and are charged with taking it back to the humans who, you know, they can give it back to them and they can do what they want with this baby. And Warwick Davis's character is kind of like, he's a family man, he's a farmer, but he has dreams of being a sorcerer and using magic and being a grand wizard in the land kind of thing and doing important things. But he pretty much knows a few kind of crappy magic tricks and that's about it. But there is a sorcerer in his village who essentially basically gives him the impetus to go on and learn about magic and develop his skills and all that kind of thing. And so the story then continues where Val Kilmer comes in as a mercenary kind of ex-fighter guy who's been thrown out of the army. He's a swordsman, and he's kind of a bit of a comic relief character in a way, while still being very central to the plot because he's a very important character, because without his help and everything, Warwick Davis wouldn't necessarily be able to get on very well. And I should mention Warwick Davis plays the title character, Willow.
Yeah.
Which is kind of important. And the rest of the story plays out, which I won't go into because I won't spoil anything too hardcore, where essentially they are trying to get this baby, Alora, who is the princess who will save them all from the evil queen. They're trying to basically rescue her and get her to a safe spot so that she can grow up and fulfill her prophecy, while the queen and all her minions are trying to hunt them down, essentially, and get the baby and kill it for themselves so that nothing bad comes to the bad people. That's the gist. It's pretty standard fantasy kind of writing, I think. Like, it's nothing too crazy. There's another race of people as well called the brownies.
Yeah.
They're like tiny little dudes.
Fuck those.
Yeah, they're like, they can fit in your hand because they're just tiny little warrior kind of guys. And they're kind of a bit like the comic relief because a couple of them come along for the journey as well. And it has got that kind of, it's obviously heavily inspired by something like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Because it's about a found family kind of group of people who are all oddbods who have to come together and support each other and help each other out in order to save the world and, all that good stuff. Meanwhile, they're constantly being hunted by these big evil dudes, including this one particular knight who's like got this skull for a helmet and is pretty imposing. And when I was a kid, I was scared as hell by this dude because, he was pretty intimidating and evil. In fact, this movie all over kind of scared me a lot when I was a kid.
It has some heavy stuff occasionally.
Well, that's one thing I just wanted to touch on before handing it over to see what you thought, Matt. But I rewatched this again just recently for us to talk about. And it reminded me how dark some kids' things were in the 80s or 90s, or but back in the day, to put it that way, I guess. Like, a lot of kids' stuff would go quite dark. Like, this pulls no punches, and it does talk about, yes, they want to kill the baby, and they are trying to hunt down this child so that they can end its life. And there is violence, and they do kill other people, and they are literally hunting people, and the end is pretty full on. There's like a full on battle and everything where Willow eventually kind of uses his powers and all that kind of stuff. And But yeah, there's heaps of darkness about it and heaps of like the bad guys like really evil. They're not just like comically bad.
Oh yeah.
Kids kind of characters. Like they're actually, evil fucks who want to kill children. And I remember it being quite scary when I was a kid as well. But at the same time, it's very uplifting, I think, because it's a story, obviously, about, the regular main character hero trope of like he doesn't really believe in himself. He gets teased by lots of people at the start, and he hasn't really made anything of himself in a grand kind of way. Like he's got a nice family and kids and a farm and all that kind of thing, which is all really cool. But everyone kind of gives him shit because he doesn't do anything special.
Yeah,
and he's a bit of a dreamer. And he goes on this big journey and basically gains the confidence to do what he wants to do and what he needs to do along the way. And part of that is because one thing I like about the story is part of Willow's arc and his journey is driven by the fact that he's a decent guy at the end of the day. And he, after finding this abandoned baby, he just wants to look after this child and make sure that, as reluctant as he is in the beginning, he's also very much, but I'm not going to just leave it and forget about it. I need to take care of it and make sure that it's safe and, get it back to its people kind of thing. And through that journey, then he gains that confidence and, becomes a bit of a warrior. So, yeah, that's my initial take on the movie. And like I say, I hear people talk fondly about like Lord of the Rings these days and that kind of thing, as in like, I grew up with Lord of the Rings. Or
yeah,
for me, that's what Willow is. Except if I were to compare the two, the Lord of the Rings movies to me are corny as fuck. And even though Willow has kind of aged a bit and there's some like interesting green screen on there and stuff, and the effects are a little bit dated and all that kind of thing, man, I just love it. It's so much grittier and darker and kind of just cooler in my book. But yeah, I'll shut up. Let me know what do you reckon, Matt, after seeing this for the first time?
Well, yeah, like you said, it is one of those like quintessential like fantasy kids movies. Like people praise this thing all around. I've heard many things about this, so I had a bit of high expectations, I guess, as well. I don't know if they were fully met, but yeah, I can totally see why this movie is still like such a beloved classic. The plot is a pretty general fantasy journey plot, like you said, but that like really lends itself well for a fantasy adventure full of different things. And I do agree, like even though this is a kids or family movie, it's having like some genuine threats and even some, I would say, gore in some parts with practical effects and creepy creatures. Like it's cool that it goes dark that way in moments. And the cast is cool. Warwick Davis is great. Also, I love his like big flowing mane, his hair. I was very jealous of that.
He's got the best hair, yeah.
Dude, yeah, he rules, and he's a good looking guy in this. And I didn't even know Val Kilmer is in this. I saw the credits in the opening credits. I saw his name and I was like, "Hey, holy shit, that rules!" And he's a fun character in this, as the like the energetic, swashbuckling mercenary warrior. Yeah, it's a good role for him for sure. Yeah, and I think it has some lengths. I don't know if it really had to be like 2 hours long, but I guess if you do like a grand fantasy story, it's easy to go that route. Oh, and I found some similarities between this and another Lucasfilms movie. A couple of weeks ago, I watched one of those Ewok movies. Do you know about those? These Ewok standalone
I've heard of
movies.
Them, but yeah.
The first one came out.
Davis played an Ewok as well.
Yeah, that's a connection. Yeah. And the first Ewok movie came out in '84, so 4 years before Willow. And it's also like a fantasy journey story at the end of the at the end of it all, it's a fantasy journey story, even if it's a science fiction thing. They have those whistling fairies in one scene in Willow. Those white light fairies that make the whistling noises. And they are straight up from the Ewok movie. They are a big part in the Ewok movie. I thought it was kind of an interesting connection and surely not coincidence. So maybe.
I mean, it is George Lucas.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It wouldn't surprise me if he's reusing ideas.
maybe Willow is just set on the moon of Endor or whatever. Maybe it's part of the Star Wars cinematic universe. But yeah, this movie was pretty damn fun. I loved near the end in the finale. First of all, the troll creatures were already scary as frick. They were actually really cool creature designs. And then when they get transformed through that magic spell, that one giant monster, some genuinely icky practical effects and stuff. That was cool shit. I didn't expect it from this sort of movie at all. Like I said,
that's part of it that I always remember, because I'd rewatch the movie all the time.
Yeah.
But especially the last maybe 20, 30 minutes or so is pretty full on.
Yeah.
And there's like lots of fights and all the evil dudes are there, and there's, like you say, the trolls and stuff as well. And it's pretty, as a kid, it was pretty scary.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
And I'd kind of skip that every now and then. I'd be like, I'm done. I've watched enough now. I've seen all the fun parts and gone on the adventure. I don't need to see all the evil stuff that's going to keep me up at night.
That's good.
But yeah, I'm interested how much you think it, like, because there's a couple of things with childhood memory movies where obviously I'm watching this with the memories of watching this as a kid.
Right.
So that adds something to it for me anyway. But at the same time, I'm also watching it as an adult, and I think it isn't perfect, obviously, in many places, but I think for the most part, it holds up pretty well. But I'm wondering what you think about that as well.
Yeah,
like the effects wise and that sort of thing too.
So, like I said, I thought it had some lengths. I think there are some sequences with some bumpy writing, to say it that way. Which I think would be like one of those things that would probably be evened out by, nostalgic memories or whatever. You don't care about that at the end of the day. So that I had a bit of, I guess, problems with that watching it for this. But the practical effects I still think hold up hella good. Though I guess it is like a Lucasfilms thing. So they always have the good practical effects and special effects. So it would actually be surprising if that was lacking. And
I really enjoy the like the warg designs. Like there's these like monster kind of animals called wargs, who are basically dogs that they've dressed up to look freaky.
Yeah.
Who are there throughout the whole movie because they're like the bad guys' pets.
Yeah.
But if you look at them hard, it's basically a dog with like shaggier fur that looks kind of wolf-like, but then like a big rat's tail on the back as well. And so it works for me because they move like animals, because they are animals moving around.
Yeah, exactly.
But they look freaky because they don't look quite right. And I just love that kind of thing.
Yeah, people, they should dress up animals more again. We need to bring that back, honestly.
Oh, to be fair, maybe it's cruel or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure you can do it in a way that it's not. Dude, people on Facebook dress their pets in all sorts of weird costumes. I'm sure we can figure out a way that's not as bad as that.
Yeah.
As demeaning as that.
Well, and I was just thinking as well, I think because this isn't a perfect movie for me these days, like Willow. It's up there, like it's just about. But the things that kind of hold it back are things that I feel like make it a good kids movie, because there's a bit of writing and there's a few characters and stuff where you're just like, that was unnecessary.
Yeah, sure.
But it's probably fun for kids as well, and I remember loving all that shit when I was a kid. So
that's
like the brownies and all that kind of thing. Like, they were awesome. I loved them when I was a kid. Now I'm kind of think they're a bit annoying, but
the brownies. God, yeah, those were weird. I honestly was kind of wondering. I don't know if, there are like I already said, there are some lengths, and I was actually kind of wondering sometimes if kids actually had the attention span for some of the slower sequences in this. But I guess they did. Clearly, you did, so it did work.
Well, yeah, I did, because I never thought of this film as like slow or anything.
Yeah. See, so what am I thinking about, right? Oh, another thing that I really want to point out, though, towards the end, when the baby is about to be sacrificed, killed, man, that went hard, huh? Like the whole visual design of like the sacrificial chamber and whatever, and the kid like in like light bondage pretty much on the table ready to be killed. And I was just thinking, man, this was made in the 80s. Wasn't this the time of the satanic panic shit? How did this even like get past angry parents or whatever?
I'm sure there were many conservative parents who didn't want that. Like, this is way worse, like way more hardcore than Harry Potter or anything like that. Like, which people still rail against, you know, and call it satanic. I'm sure this and other films of its time, like, you know, Labyrinth is another one I think of, or The Dark Crystal. I don't know if you know that one. But all these kind of sci-fi fantasy films for kids that were pretty dark, they all had some dark stuff in there, like for sure, and some pretty hardcore shit. But I think we see that stuff in a different light these days than we did at the time, because you know, we see like, oh, there's an infant being tortured on screen kind of thing, and in the day it was more like, oh, look, Willow's going to rescue the baby.
Right. I get,
like, it was still bad. It wasn't like, oh, cool, who cares about the baby? But it was, you know, the lens is different because you know different things, kind of thing, you know.
That's true.
I think that just happens with everything anyway. That's why, well, there's one question I want to ask about your film, which kind of relates to this a bit as well, like how we view older things that we may not really accept these days.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but we can talk about that later, because I think it's more relevant for your movie, I think.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, no, the baby sacrifice, dude, I was kind of shocked. I don't know why. That was like no punches pulled at all.
Yeah. But I did like there's lots of cool things in here that you see in lots of other fantasy adventures as well. And that's why it makes me think of Lord of the Rings. Like, when they first start out, they're fit to take the baby back to, you know, they call them the dakinis, I think. The fully grown humans, or full-size human people, are called dakinis, and that's their race kind of thing. But so they go to take the baby back, and there's a handful of the people from Willow's town who are picked to go with him. But like, there's the dude who's always giving him shit for not being good at anything, and there's like the warrior guy from this town. But then there's the other dude who's just his mate, and who's a really sweet character who just encourages him and is really nice, and kind of like the Samwise character in Lord of the Rings, if you wanted to make a direct comparison. But I really love those kind of characters, and I love those kind of stories where, you know, they're teaching kids good things about friendship and supporting each other, and not just listening to bullies and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then like Willow's own journey himself, where he's a little guy, but he's persistent, and he makes his voice heard when he needs it to be heard, and he's ignored in other times. And, you know, and I think it's really interesting then having the brownies, because the brownies are even smaller than him, so they're even more ignored than he is, even though they're a bit of comic relief. But I kind of like the fact that they're there as well to kind of show that, well, it's all a matter of perspective anyway. Because to them, everyone's huge, even Willow himself, who is smaller than, say, Val Kilmer's character. And I really like that kind of stuff anyway. I think these are good stories to tell kids, good lessons to learn, and all this kind of stuff, all wrapped in a kind of interesting, creative kind of wrapper. Like,
no, I agree, especially if I didn't really care for the brownie humor, I guess, but I did like the idea of putting another race that's even smaller than the already small protagonist people. So that was an interesting decision for sure. Also, shout out to the, you know, the final action scene includes the two witches fight.
Yeah.
And like just shout out to them for having like a big, epic, grand, gloomy battle between like two older ladies. That was just really cool. Nowadays they would raise their pitchforks and call it like the woke agenda or whatever. But like it was already like there was already room for that sort of stuff back then, and it worked so well. It was just kind of refreshing as well, instead of like a regular, like, I don't know, dude warrior fight or whatever. I would be love to see more like that.
Well, and I think that's a good point too. Like, yeah, this isn't your typical, I guess, tropes and roles and characters for a fantasy. Because you'd think then, like, maybe Val Kilmer's character would be more of a hero, but his character arc is that he's basically a dickhead and he becomes good in the end.
Yeah.
And it takes a while and everything, but, you know, he's always trying to get out of it or do something else, or, you know, he's always reluctantly coming along for the ride. But yeah, I think it's great, and how the central character, other than Willow, but like the MacGuffin of the movie, the baby,
right?
is a girl who's going to grow up and be the princess and save the world, for one. And yes, the main villain is a evil queen, but one of her main soldiers as well is a female soldier. And because there's the female soldier and there's the other guy with the skull mask, and they're like the main people of her army who are going out and doing her bidding. So yeah, it doesn't seem as kind of gender restrictive or stereotypical as a lot of other movies.
Yeah.
Even something like, I mean, yeah, Lord of the Rings is much older, even though the movies are newer, but it was written a long time ago. So of course, all the heroes are men who go out and save the world.
Yeah.
But it is, I agree, it is nice. And it's nice to see movies like that where, because I remember in the day, it's not like it wasn't woke as such, because there was, say, like, you know, a feminist push to have more females represented in media and all that kind of thing, for sure. Kind of like how, you know, Labyrinth has a female lead character who saves the day and all that kind of thing. And it's definitely not uncommon. But of course, in a world that we live in, it is still less common.
Yeah.
So it is kind of nice to see. And it's nice to see it, like you say, like not because of some quote unquote kind of agenda that's making these decisions happen. They just did it because they thought, well, this is a good story.
Yeah.
And and it works. At least that's the way I see it.
And they made it. Yeah, they made it work.
Yeah. And it was really, really cool. Like that evil queen is so scary. And I remember being a kid and she scared the shit out of me. Like she was a very effective villain in every single way. And especially that final fight where it's like raining and there's lightning going everywhere and all this kind of stuff. That scared the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah. I can imagine, yeah.
But in a very good way as far as filmmaking goes.
Yeah. So. I would agree, yeah. It was dope.
Well, what would you rate Willow as a modern viewer?
Yeah, well.
Because surprisingly enough, when I was researching this, it's only got like 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah,
on Letterboxd it's not that highly rated either.
Letterboxd it's like 3.5 stars or 2 stars or something.
Yeah.
Average. 3.4 is the average on Letterboxd. And yeah, 53% critic on Rotten Tomatoes, but 80% popular rating. So, you know, audiences do seem to like it more than critics.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, I am interested in your own take.
Well, for all the cool things it does, it is a bit of a heavy pull, at least for me, to make basically a babysit adventure engaging throughout a longer stretch of time. I had like, you know, carrying this bundle of brabbling flesh around is not like that engaging for me. can get annoying in certain sequences. So there was some, you know, pullback for me. So I'm really between a 6 out of 10 to 7 out of 10. I think I would end up going with a 7 out of 10 because I respect the things that I like more than I dislike the things that I disliked. But yeah, that's basically where I stand. I don't think it's like an amazing movie, but I do think it does some things very, very well. And I absolutely see why it's considered such a classic by so many people.
Well, I think that's a better metric in my mind, is like you can watch it and go, oh yeah, I get it.
Right, yeah.
Even if it doesn't land for you today, kind of thing.
Yeah. So if you had to put it in numbers, are you at a full 10 out of 10?
It's an easy 9 out of 10 for me.
All right. Yeah.
Like, there are things about it. Like, there's a few moments in it here and there which I'm like, like, yeah, that's not very good writing. Or
yeah,
I'm not really one for the comic relief characters in anything because they seem like a waste of time for me. Like, you can, there's a lot of funny stuff without the forced jokes here and there, which don't really land because they're usually cheesy anyway. And
yeah,
you know, they're just for kids, but that's cool. When I was a child, this would be a 10 out of 10, no worries. But as an adult now, I'm like, no, it's a 9 out of 10. Like, it's still one of my favorite childhood movies of all time, and always will be because I have that relationship with it. But it's not perfect. And
yeah,
whereas something like A Back to the Future to me is perfect. That's a 10 out of 10, no worries, hands down, easy peasy.
Yeah.
Even though it does have its own problems here and there, but you know, maybe we can talk about that another day. Yeah. Willow, though, I think is kind of like, again, like I say, I was watching it recently and I thought, yeah, when I hear people talk about Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or how passionate they are about, oh, I saw this when I was a kid and I fucking love it, and I grew up with the Lord of the Rings movies or whatever. I don't really like those movies very much, to be honest, but this is kind of my version of that. So, you know, it's pretty up there for me one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Meanwhile, let's change the script quite a bit.
Yeah, completely different vibe, I believe. Because my film is
let us know
something. Yeah, I guess a bit of a disclaimer before I actually go into my film. My movie pick is The Indian in the Cupboard from 1995. So obviously there's an outdated term for Native American people in the title right there. And yeah, just disclaimer that we're probably going to be using the words in relation to the title of this movie, but I don't think either of us supports the use of the word Indian for Native American people. I know that I don't, with its historical connotation. It's unfortunate.
It's a dated thing.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that it's, stuck in there. But here we are still talking about the movie itself, because I think the movie itself actually kind of redeems itself in a way. Well, so The Indian in the Cupboard, released in 1995, directed by Frank Oz, who is known as the director for things like Little Shop of Horrors, Dark Crystal, which we mentioned earlier, and Muppets Take Manhattan. The movie is starring Hal Scardino, Lightfoot, Rishi Bhatt, Steve Coogan, David Keefe, Lindsay Cruz, Richard Jenkins, and a bunch of other people. Written by Melissa Matheson, who also wrote the script for E.T., apparently. And the whole thing is based on a book by Lynn Reed Banks, a book which apparently you read, so I'm gonna be asking you a bunch of questions later. And the plot of the movie is kind of really basic and strange. It's about this kid that celebrates his birthday, and his big brother gifts him a dusty old cupboard, a regular ass cupboard. But as it later turns out, the plastic toys he puts in that cupboard become alive when he does that. And so the first thing that he does turn from toy to life is this Native American figurine. And the whole movie basically revolves about their relationship and focuses on the kids eventually like a bit of a coming of age thing where he learns about responsibility and the meaning of life and death a bit and all these big things as he sort of gains a second father figure with the little Native American that he summoned there. And so I grew up with this. I didn't watch it. I was 2 years old when this actually came out, so I didn't watch it when it was fresh. We taped this off TV at some point. I just watched the VHS a bunch of times. And I think I already had a knack for small people, I guess. Because I watched this, I watched The Borrowers. I loved Toy Story for the like small people in a big environment thing. I always had a knack for this. This is just one of those things for me.
Yeah, showing the kids.
Yeah, exactly. That too. I fucking love that shit. And Indian in the Cupboard is one of those films that really stuck with me because it's also just so comfortable. It has such a nice, wholesome vibe to it, which it also pairs with all these really valuable, typical like life lessons that they put in there. And the occasional like just fun sequence with the whole toys to life concept. Like there's this one iconic scene where the kid just puts all sorts of action figures in the thing to see what happens. And then when they come to life, they just all fight each other and it's awesome for 10 seconds and then it's over. But as a kid, that was like the hypest shit ever. Seeing like Darth Vader fight a T-Rex and Boba Fett or whatever. It was so cool. And I have been going back to this movie every couple of years. So I think the last time I saw this was like 8 years ago or whatever. But every time I go back to this film, especially like triggered by the outdated title, I always like expect the worst in terms of like the representation of the actual Native American. And I am always positively surprised that that's actually handled quite good. Because first of all, they actually cast a Native American actor for the Native American role, which is cool. Apparently, from what I read, he was also very involved in getting a faithful representation going of the tribe of Native American that he plays.
Yeah.
And
I think he's a Iroquois, if I remember.
He plays an Iroquois. I don't know how do you pronounce that. He plays an Iroquois, specifically an Onondaga, one of the Onondaga people.
Yeah. And
they really, really emphasize that it's not just like generic Native American. No, this is an actual person, which I really like, to a degree, a real person. It's still like a character in a children's movie with all of those limitations that come with that. But it's pretty thorough, I think. And I love, and I keep forgetting that this is a thing, but I love all the little details where the Native American character is confronted by Native American stereotypes from the other characters and just goes like, what the fuck are you talking about? I have no idea what you're saying and shit. And I love that shit. It's so good at sort of subtly keeping the like showing that a Native American isn't just a bland, like every Native American is this thing, but there's differences, and this is just a person from this one tribe of people with its own things and shit. And I love how it like differentiates that throughout the movie. It's maybe I'm hyping this up too much. Maybe I'm reading more in it than that actually is. But I think it's kind of ironic that it does it so well while having the unfortunate outdated title. It's kind of funny. It even has... Well, go on if you want.
No, I was just going to say, just to speak on that as well, like, I think in to talk in very black and white extremist kind of language, these days there seems to be a tendency to want to kind of delete any mishaps of the past and go, well, we don't use those words anymore, or we're not, all those sorts of things, like different words for different races or that sort of thing, or things that might be particularly sexist these days or considered that way, or homophobic, or, all this sorts of stuff. And for the record, I think we're always doing better. Like, things are improving. I'm not one of these people who go, oh, it was harmless back in the day, so we should still do the same thing. No, fuck that. It's better to learn and improve and do better.
Yeah.
However, in 1995, when this film and book, I can't remember when the book came out, but it was before then. But when it was called The Indian in the Cupboard, it wasn't called that in a way that was meant to be derogatory towards Native American people.
Yeah.
That's just the word that people used at the time. And it was very innocent, and it wasn't meant in any kind of way about it, basically. It was basically that's the term you use.
Yeah.
Yes, these days we've learned better, and we know that that's not a very good word, and we probably wouldn't use it these days by choice. So, if someone came out with a brand new thing now with the same title, I'd be like, maybe update it, dudes.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, it's not even that it was fine. It was just no one knew any better kind of thing. And it might have even been a bit progressive, because this is where I think about these sorts of things. And I don't like it when old stuff gets cancelled because we now have a different idea about things, essentially, is what I'm getting at. And I remember, because I think because I'm old enough that I remember being alive at times when things were happening that have now changed significantly, such as the acceptance of homosexuality in society now is way more advanced and better, and, in a much better space for everyone than it was even in the 90s. However, I remember growing up in the 90s, and I remember thinking, wow, we're also accepting and progressive and everything, and aren't we doing great with all this stuff where, no one cares about homosexuality anymore. It's not like a thing that people, any good, decent person would give a fuck about, and all that kind of thing. At the time, I remember thinking that and thinking, wow, look at us. We're so progressive. We're so, on top of things. But now I watch things from the 90s, which seemed so accepting and progressive at the time, and I go, oh, actually, we were a little bit behind the eight ball, weren't we?
Right, yeah.
And some of those jokes were a bit on the nose by today's standards, where we're much better now, all that kind of thing. And I hope and I pray and I think that in 20 years' time, when we look back at 2024, we'll be going, man, we were really not as accepting and progressive back then as we are today, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Because that just means we're continuing to learn and improve and get better. And
exactly.
So I guess I just wanted to say that, yes, I understand why a title like using the word Indian in the title is probably something that, yes, we wouldn't do these days, because we know it's bullshit. And we know it's, not a good term to use because it just generalizes in a very bad way a colonialist kind of perspective as well, and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, we know all that. But at the time when people used this term, it wasn't for nefarious or negative purposes either. Yeah. They were doing the best with what they had, kind of thing. And yes, we now do better with better and all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts as well, but I think there is room for accepting that these things did exist at the time. And if it's not like super offensive, then that it's a scale. I mean, how do you say what's super offensive or not? But if it's not like a slur or something, a word you literally would not ever make your lips say, then it's probably okay to still have it and talk about it, as long as it's, also knowing why it's probably an issue.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that the title of this movie isn't like damning this movie to that this should be like buried or whatever, just because of the title. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, this word wasn't used in bad faith back in the day. Hell, there are still organizations by Native Americans that use that term because that's what they identify as. I remember reading interviews with Native American athletes in sports organizations that use the word Eskimo still in the title, which is the same thing, that it's not actually by most considered a respectful term for a lot of people. But still, there are absolutely natives that still identify with those words and don't see it in the same light. So I'm as a white European dude, I'm not at all the authority to say if a word like this is okay or whatnot. I, for myself, just think I wouldn't use it nowadays, but that doesn't mean that older media that has it in it is immediately problematic to the degree that it should be buried. And this movie is pretty much a good example for that, I think.
Well, and I think it is an interesting discussion that we could obviously go on for hours about.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the movie.
Yeah, back to the movie. But I have a little conspiracy theory in relation to the word and this movie, because I'm probably reading way too much into this, but this is one of those thoughts that I had in my mind. The close friend of the protagonist in this movie and the kid that gifts him the Native American toy, the figurine, is someone of actually Indian descent, so like Eurasian Indian, actual India. And I wonder if that was like a subtle decision to actually like start the conversation. Why the hell do we call both of these people Indian? I don't know. I'm probably reading way too much into it, but I like the idea that maybe was an idea to get that conversation going.
It is a nice idea. Well, and I do actually agree with you where everything about the movie is actually pretty well handled.
Yeah.
And there's no other cringe bits where you're like, oh, yeah, that's dated. Oh, that's dated. Oh, that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
About, Native American stuff, at least.
Yeah.
I have issues with some of the film, but not with that stuff. Like, I thought that stuff was done well. And they obviously took time to, listen to actual people who know what they're talking about, essentially. And not just make assumptions or full-on stereotypes. Even though they kind of do that, but they do that because that's kind of the point of the movie.
Yeah, with a purpose.
Where, it's not just the Native American; it's the other characters as well as stereotypes too.
Mm-hmm. True.
Because along the way, he also, brings to life, like you say, a cowboy.
Yeah.
And an English army dude.
The medic. Yeah.
And so. They're all stereotypes of themselves as well.
True.
Which is fine because it's they're children's toys at the end of the day, so they're not meant to be, I don't think that's the point of the film.
Yeah, yeah.
But I read this book when I was a kid.
Right.
And I very much enjoyed the book. I loved it. I think I actually read it a few times. It was one of those stories that just I captured my imagination and I loved it, and I wanted to have a cupboard where I could bring my toys to life.
Hell yeah.
And like I used to have a pretty active imagination as well. And I actually thought maybe I could do it.
Same, dude. Same. Love that.
And I remember trying to get to sleep and constantly thinking about different things, ways I could bring my toys to life. And not being able to get to sleep as a result. But this is all before like Toy Story or any of those like other kind of famous toys to life kind of stories. And so this is like the first instance for me, at least, because it was when I was a child. So the book was probably written in the 80s or earlier, or the 70s even, or something. I could probably look that up, but yeah. I'd forgotten I'd actually seen this film before, which I mentioned to you before recording, but for the sake of anyone listening, I had seen this film before and I had already rated it higher than I would probably rate it today. Because I've got to admit, this did not age well for me.
No.
Because that kid, oh my God.
Hascadino, the main kid.
I mean, I don't wish him any harm. He did a decent job. But fuck that kid and his fucking face. I want to punch him.
Oh no. A poor soul. He does have some like, goofy faces in the
Oh, that's fine. He's just being a goofy kid. Well, it's more the character. Like this, I mean, not the actor. The actor's fine. Who cares? It's the character, and he's just the biggest shit, and just such a dickhead. And he brings this toy to life, and cool. Okay, he doesn't quite appreciate that it's a real living being initially. So I get that. But even when he does, when he makes the connection and goes, oh, hang on, you're a real person with a real life and all that kind of thing, it got really uncomfortable for me because it started taking on like tones of slavery and like the kid with the magnifying glass and burning ants in the backyard kind of thing. Like it's like, oh, this is all shit that doesn't vibe well with me because even though he was a living, human being with a story, and he even acknowledged he's got his own family and everything that he's kind of taking him from. He's like, no, I'll build you your own little playpen and you can fucking live here with me and, don't worry about going back to your life. Like, and one thing I did like was the way that they portrayed, I forget his name, but the Native American character, Little Bear, there you go, how tripped out he was by the whole experience because, he initially just awakes in this world and there's this giant fucking kid looking at him who he then assumes is, am I dead? Is this God? What's going on? And it takes him a while to actually realize kind of what's happening, even though he still thinks it's, magic and he's dreaming and all this kind of stuff. But I really liked that because it kind of justified why he was willing to be interested in what he's doing and explore that kind of experience a bit more because he sees it as, this almost like a spiritual journey. Yeah. Whereas the kid is just like, he, look at this toy, it's alive. Isn't that fun? And yes, towards the end, he kind of eventually realizes that, hang on, this is a real person and I don't want to fuck with them anymore. But it's only after he has fucked with them enough that it's like, hang on, dude, you're actually ruining this dude's life. You're not helping in any way. And, another toy that he brings to life, it does, spoiler, but whatever.
I wanted to mention that
does
too.
Actually die.
Yeah.
So he has to deal with the fact that he caused the death of a living being because he basically, for anyone who doesn't know, he brings another Native American character to life, but just to steal his bow and arrow to then give to Little Bear as like a gift. But this other character, when he does bring him to life, he's an old man with a bow and arrow, and he kind of sees the kid and he has a heart attack and dies right in front of him.
Yes.
Which is perfectly reasonable response.
What a radical decision for the story, though. I was kind of, I respected that.
Well, but this is where I think it departs from the book for me. Like all these, it's pretty faithful to the book from what I can remember.
Okay.
I haven't read the book in a long time, so forgive me if I get it wrong. But I think as far as the plot goes, everything that happens is pretty faithful to the book, and there's not really any differences or major differences or anything. But when you're reading a book, you add a lot of the interpretation, everything yourself, obviously, and it's your imagination that's creating the characters and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Guided by the writer.
Yeah.
Much more so than, say, in a film. So, I remember it being a much kinder and gentler and sadder story than the film kind of gave me, at least this time watching it, as an older, middle-aged kind of person.
Right.
Because I do remember enjoying it more when I was a child or when I was younger.
Exactly, yeah.
So there is that. But I enjoyed it much less this time because I was just like, what the fuck are you doing, kid? And his mate as well. Like you mentioned his
his friend.
His friend who who gave him the figure in the first place. What a little prick.
Yeah, he is a prick later on, yeah.
Like they're just, and they, in a way it's kind of authentic because they're just kids playing with toys.
Yes.
And they just want to show off, like, look at my cool toy I've got and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they're doing it instead of with plastic things, they're doing it with real human beings who are not exactly thrilled to be there either. No. Like they do get to know each other, but it's kind of out of necessity more than want or desire. Like it's not like any of the toys kind of turn around and go, oh, please. Oh, I'd love to stay. That would be great. Like they're all like, oh, okay, well, yeah.
I guess I'll deal
what's
with
going
this,
on?
Yeah.
Because it is. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow and you were a toy size in someone's bedroom.
Dude, I would love to die that way. Hang out with some
you'd
bugs.
probably have a heart attack and that'd be that.
Oh, yeah.
Or a pigeon would come down and eat you.
Oh, shit, bro.
But, so I guess it just lands different with how old you are because you see different things and you have a different perspective and all that kind of thing, which is fine.
Yeah.
And that's where I don't want to sound like I'm hating on this movie because I do remember liking it when I was a child. I just liked it a lot less this time. Like,
I mean, you're absolutely right.
A lot less.
Yeah. I mean, the initial premise is so fucked up with white kid
Yeah.
basically gaining like a god ability to summon this Native American for his entertainment. It is completely fucked up. It's also one of the reasons why I thought I would really not why I expected way worse going back to this movie. But I think in the given the scope of this being a children's movie with the obvious attempt at like teaching the viewer some valuable lessons in a wholesome story or whatever, I think in that context they do a pretty good job at developing that really weird initial concept into something that actually has a bit of value as the kid learns stuff. Like you said, the scene with the kid, with the old man that immediately dies from a heart attack, which, like I said, I actually really respect the decision to have it, to have him die right then and there and have the kid have to deal with it in a way. I like that. And that follows up with the scene later where they go into the garden. The kid has, well, the kid accepts the task to actually bury the man and give him his last respects, even though he's completely uncomfortable with that because he is a kid dealing with death. And at the same time, though, we have the little bear hunting a tiny miniature deer. That was also a toy to life thing. And he, after getting the deer, after killing the deer, also pays last respect to the animal before taking it apart. And that's like parallel to the funeral with the kid, where he learns to pay respect to a dead being. And I think this scene with the orchestral soundtrack and whatever, I think this scene really had an impact on me as a kid, and it still makes me feel some things watching it now. So I think even if it's clunky and coming from a weird initial scene, whatever, it still is fairly effective in what it's trying to do. And I like it for that.
Yeah.
Have you only read the first book, right? Because there's like 5.
I think so. I don't remember, to be honest. But
I really wonder.
I do remember reading the Indian in the Cupboard's book, if not books. I remember getting right into it at the time. And knowing my parents, they might have bought me all the sequels because they usually did that. Like if I was into a book that was a series, they'd load me up with the rest of the series to encourage me to read and everything.
Hell yeah. But you don't remember like where this ended up or whatever?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Because I really wonder how you stretch this out like to 5 stories or whatever. The initial book came out in 1980, by the way, and the final in 1998. Okay. So there was like pretty long stretch of time.
Okay, so I definitely didn't read them that far. Yeah. I feel like I might have read a sequel, like a second book, but I don't think I would have. I read much more after that.
I'm super curious to check them out as an adult now.
Well, I kind of feel like they wouldn't be very good because they are children's books,
right?
So,
but they're probably also quick reads, so maybe it's fine.
Well, hey, yeah. I'm thinking they'll be very light,
right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, dude, I love this movie,
and I can dig that. I think, and that's where I think, age has kind of put me against this movie because I fucking hated that kid. Like, I cannot quite express just how much I hated that kid. Like, I wanted to punch his stupid face every fucking 5 minutes. Like, just because he was such a dick. And and his parents indulged him. And I was like, no, fucking discipline your stupid kid. Like, teach him how to be a decent kid and stop just indulging his bullshit.
But isn't that what isn't that what the little bear character eventually did? Some stern talking to.
Well, and I like that, to be fair. I like that Little Bear wasn't just his best friend from the get-go. Like, he actually turns around to him and says, fucking, why don't you stand up for yourself, dickhead?
Yeah.
and why don't you like act like a freaking grown-up? And he kind of, and there's a point in the movie where they have an argument because the kid is just acting like a kid, basically, and being a dick.
Yeah.
And Little Bear kind of realizes, and he says something like, oh, you are just a kid. You're not a god or anything. You're just a fucking child.
Mm-hmm.
and that's like such an insult because it's kind of implied that in his culture, you know, the men are the strong warriors and that sort of thing, and they provide and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably a debate for another time, but it's probably accurate though, to be fair. And so to him, he's like, well, why aren't you acting like a man? Whatever the fuck that was meant to mean. And so he realizes that this giant being that he's kind of being enthralled by is just a child in a weird situation, and he's not this deity who he should look up to. He's like, no, you're just a fucking kid. Jeez.
Yeah.
Go, you know, if you're going to act like that, I don't have time for you, kind of thing. And that kind of does kind of trigger him to start thinking about, no, I should act like an adult and, you know, not just, you know, whinge about everything and be flaky and all that kind of thing. I should stand up for myself and
be responsible.
You know, take responsibility for stuff and like actually do things rather than just whine about them the whole time and be a little fuck. And so, you know, I had a difficult time with it as a 42-year-old man watching this. I do think I enjoyed it more when I was a kid, so
that makes sense.
Accept that. But man, if I was going to rate it again today, it would not be very good.
Oof, I'm scared. Come on, can't be that terrible. Remember all the good times.
Remember the good times. I honestly, you're not going to like it. I'll say sorry straight away, but this is like a 1.5 star.
What the
out of 5?
Frick, man. Even
like a 3 out of 10 for me. Seriously, I spent 80% of the film just going, I'm gonna fucking punch that kid.
Oh my god, dude. Leave the kid alone.
Just being angry.
He's a kid. He's dealing with difficult things. He got granted like a power that he has no like grasp to actually.
Yeah, and then abuses the hell out of it.
Because he's a kid.
It takes him a whole movie to recognize that maybe what he's doing is being a little fuck, when he really should have recognized from the first time he opened that freaking cupboard and there's a live dude there looking at him, scared as all shit. Like, have a think about that as well, because that hit me too this time watching it. Like, how fucking terrifying would that be? You're living your life, you go to bed, and you wake up inside this fucking cupboard, and there's a dumbass kid looking at you who's like 100 times bigger than you, and he kind of looks at you funny, and you kind of look at him like, what the hell? And then he slams the door on you, locks it and fucks off, and you kind of go back to your old life. Yeah. And it's like, man, that'd be the most terrifying thing in the world. No wonder the dude fucking has a heart attack and dies.
Maybe that's what happens every time we dream at night. You don't know. And we're still fine.
So it just pissed me off more than anything.
It's a really weird premise to begin with. I think it just demands a lot of, suspension of disbelief or whatever.
I think it belongs in a childhood realm of imagination and probably innocence that I can't really afford it these days.
Damn, you lost your whimsicalness. How sad.
Well,
just joking.
No, I lost my time for shit people.
Damn, spitting facts. Holy shit.
I ain't got time for little fucks who are on power trips over people who are smaller and weaker than them. Yeah. Like, be it child or adult or anything. It's like, no.
Fuck.
And, that's all a bit tongue-in-cheek anyway. But for real, I just, it didn't land for me. Yeah. It didn't speak to me. It didn't give me any grand gesture or lesson or anything like that. So it was pretty light and unremarkable in many, many ways. So, unfortunately... 3 out of 10 is about as high as I'll go, I think, on this one.
Damn. Maybe I need to heighten.
What about you as a...
Yeah, maybe I need to heighten my rating to even out yours. That's criminal.
To compensate.
Yeah. No, I always had it at a 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. It's probably where it's going to stay as well. I am kind of weirdly passionate about this, though. But I guess that's also just a nostalgia talking. That's literally what that is. So... yeah, there you go.
Well, it's like me with Willow. Like, I'm sure my fondness of it is not a very objective reflection on the film. Yeah, and that's cool. Like you with this one, like that's fine. That's a legitimate, take on it. it's just something that isn't necessarily transferable to others.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the only reason I realized I'd seen this film before is because I looked it up on Letterboxd and realized I'd already rated it. And I'd rated it 3.5.
Out of 5.
Obviously, I liked it. Out of 5, yeah, so 7 out of 10. So obviously, whenever I did that, I still had fond memories of it and still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Then, yeah. Then everything
But
went downhill.
nowadays, for whatever, maybe I'm just, a shitter person in general. But
Jesus.
It just did not land for me. There are some kids' films I find that are just too much kids' film.
Sure.
Where I can, like this one as well, I can appreciate kids getting into it. I can see why I got into the books at the time. That's all good. But I have to be honest, for me now, I did not find this very enjoyable.
Oh, wow.
And it was very much just, a kids' film that I obviously missed out on and didn't have any real connection to. To be fair, this will trip some people out, but it's like Neverending Story. Another early 90s, 80s classic, I can't remember when it came out, fantasy adventure film. I never saw it when I was a kid. I only saw it when I was I think in my early 20s is when I saw it first. And it's good.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I can see why kids love it, but it didn't really do much for me. I was like, oh yeah, this is a nice kind of fantasy adventure, but that's about it. So, I think timing is a lot with these kind of nostalgic childhood memory type films. And unfortunately, this one, the timing was not right.
Bummer. We need to go back 7 years ago where you actually liked this movie. I'm going to find the time machine.
Well, and things change though as well. Like that's...
Yeah.
I'd be kind of worried if things didn't change, perhaps. I don't know.
No, I'm with you
weird
there.
Thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just life. Like, there are things that I've liked in the past that I now actually really hate and vice versa.
Yeah.
So, who's to tell what I'll be thinking in another 20 years?
True.
Maybe I'll come back around and be like, actually, that Indian film was fucking cool.
And then I'm going to be like, dude, that sucks. How can you like this? That's crazy.
Yeah. You'll be like, oh, I used to watch that when I was a child.
I'm going to cancel you on Twitter 3.0 or whatever.
Yeah, but then it'll just be called Zed instead of Ed.
Zed. Oh my God. And everybody's just going to ask why. Yeah, okay.
I think we've exhausted that enough for today, don't you?
Yeah, I think we need to wrap up this nostalgia party or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, these things I think are interesting discussions though, especially the thing about, acceptance of things from back in the day and how we've learned and we do things better now and all that. Like I say, we could probably go on like that for hours.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it's nice. I always try to think that it's nice to acknowledge the fact that, yeah, that's not cool by today's standards, but I wouldn't hold it against the film or the book or anything anyway, because at the time that's what they did.
Right.
So yeah, even if it does seem a bit insensitive or, naive, I guess, is perhaps the best way to put it.
Sure, yeah. All right.
But are you ready?
Yeah.
To spin that wheel?
I'm ready to spin the wheel, and I hope our listeners are ready to spew their hateful comments beneath our content.
Yeah.
Gonna spin the wheel
Everyone,
right now.
Who wants... I'd love to put a poll, but I'm not going to. But who wants to punch the kid?
Oh my God.
Let me know if you do.
This is not the problematic route I thought we would go with this episode. Anyway, speaking of punching people, the next subject is going to be martial arts. So that's going to be dope. I know you are going to be hyped for this one.
Hell yeah. Love me some martial arts movies.
That's going to be one.
I know you're a fan too.
Yeah, that's going to be one that's going to be difficult to pick for me because there are so many cool ones.
And I'm definitely going to have to look at what you've watched before because there's a couple that spring to mind immediately. But
yeah.
One in particular. Well, I know which one I'll pick if you haven't seen it, and I don't think you would have because no one ever has.
Okay.
But it's dope. It's dope as hell.
I'm very curious about that.
I shall reveal that next time.
Yes, I'm not gonna be nailing my choice down now either, like I did before. All right.
Yeah. Oh, but martial arts is such a broad thing. Like, do you go even international? It's an international genre.
True.
It could be from anywhere around the world. Everyone does some cool martial arts stuff. Oh, now I'm thinking of other options that I could nominate.
Uh-oh.
Damn it. Well, do you go for awesome fighting in a shit film or awesome everything? Do you go for like weapons and stuff based martial arts, or do you go for just straight up punching dudes? Man, so many options.
We can put weaponized martial arts as another category for later.
Yeah. Well, I know you're a big fan of Jackie Chan.
That's true, yeah.
For starters. And because we were talking about Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung, who are both have worked together a lot in Hong Kong cinema to make movies and stuff throughout the 70s and 80s. And we're both kind of big fans of that because I'm working my way through Jackie Chan's back catalogue too.
Hell yeah.
But I love me some Sammo.
Yeah.
Sammo to me is like, watching him fight is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And Jackie's a very close second for that matter. So yeah. I'm interested to see what you nominate.
Yeah.
As a connoisseur of the genre.
Same to you too.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for today, for this month.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for listening. I hope maybe somebody listened to this as a young lad and will be nostalgic for this episode in 20 years. Please comment if so. We will surely be still
to
here.
all our children-aged audience.
Who knows? Anyway.
Hot tip. Don't punch the other kids.
There you go.
No matter how much you want to.
You're back on track.
How stupid their face is.
Finally. All right. Thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah.
And we'll see you maybe next time.
Indeed.
Bye-bye.
So long.